Not to brag or anything, but we got some awesome music in that intro. It gets me pumped up every time. Welcome to the Vol Bros. My name is Evan. This is my brother Rustin, and we are two Vol Bros who are actually bros in real life. And we live right here in East Tennessee. And so we are super pumped about the Lady Vols. The base Vols had a rough couple days here after a very promising start to the series. I would like to recall to everyone's memory that on our last live show, we had we get talking about what's coming up, and I mentioned that the Tennessee baseball team had to go to Athens to play a series at Georgia. And I said it's not going to be an easy series. Just ask Arkansas what happened when they were down there. Well, we saw what happened with the BaseVols. 12-3 win Friday night. Really a strong performance. And then unfortunately, the last two games did not go as they had hoped. Certainly, Saturday was actually the score was 3-1, but it was a much closer game than even that score indicated.
Yeah.
And then today, they just couldn't get timely hitting, allowed a lot of offense by Georgia. There was one home run Georgia hit. It was an opposite field home run, I think it's like the 6th or 7th inning. It was very much a metal bat home run. Drew Beam's throwing the ball 93 miles an hour, and dude he makes a good swing on it, but the ball barely cleared the right field fence. And that was 100% the result of he had a metal bat in his hand and the ball was traveling in an excessive rate of speed toward him. So when it hit the bat, it exploded off that bat. But Tennessee had some strong hits today. They're just right at people, unfortunately. So lose 2 out of 3 in that series. What were your thoughts about the series, Rustin?
I think there's a couple of things that are a little concerning. Number one, why no Chase Burns this weekend?
Yeah, that was weird.
Especially today at the end of the 4th inning when it was 4-4. Like, it was the ideal time. Drew Beam did not have his stuff today. It wasn't good. He was throwing flat fastballs. It doesn't matter how hard you throw. If it doesn't move, it's easy to hit. And, there was a couple of times, for those of you who don't know what it means, this means cut fastball. If you ever see Kyle Stark hold this down to Drew Beam, he's saying throw the cutter. There was a couple of times today he called it and the ball didn't move. It stayed in a straight line all the way to home plate. And that's a problem for Drew Beam because his whole game is that his pitches move. Everything has movement. And I thought it was pretty obvious early in the game that he did not have his best stuff today. So when they tied it up 4-4, and I'm sitting there going, where is Chase Burns?
Yeah.
Like, the man's a starter. He can go the rest of this game. He could throw the next 5 innings easily.
Yeah.
And we leave Drew Beam out there and leave him out there, and they get home run after home run. And all of a sudden it's 8-4. And now we bring AJ Russell. And I'm going, what is going on? Like, is Chase Burns injured? Is there a reason we're not bringing him here? Because going into today, the coaching staff was talking about how excited they were that they had Drew and Chase still available. And we never brought him in. So if that was a coaching decision, that is a bad day for the coaching staff.
Yeah, I was very surprised Chase Burns didn't come in after Drew Beam. But then, even after Russell, like he stayed in much longer than I thought he would. And kudos to him. He did a great job. But
yeah,
I fully expected by the 7th inning we would see Chase Burns. And then, Russell went back out. And then Halverson came in. And I'm like, wait, what's going on?
yeah.
I understand at that point the Vols were not ahead, so it was not a situation where you want to bring in some kind of shut them down. But by the same token, you at least want to get him a bullpen. If for nothing else, that outing where he goes out and throws full speed on the mound is essentially a bullpen.
Yeah.
So now, because here's the thing: whether or not he got in that game. After that game, he threw a bullpen. I guarantee you that. Like, he's not going to go a whole weekend without throwing off a mound. So why we wasted it in the actual bullpen rather than on the mound, I don't know. But they're not going to let Chase Burns go 2 whole weeks without throwing a baseball from the mound.
Yeah.
So he threw a bullpen this weekend. Unfortunately, it was just in the bullpen, not during the game, because they're not going to let him go 2 weeks without pitching.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I felt like it was pretty obvious when we got it back to 4-4. We had all the momentum in the world, and Chase Burns is a momentum pitcher. Like he rides that. He thrives on it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He loves the energy. I was like, we have all the momentum in the world. Drew Beam is not throwing well. He doesn't have his best stuff. You've got your former number one ace sitting in the bullpen just waiting. Why are we not going to him? It was just a bizarre decision. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but the opening home run was not the pitch that was called.
I didn't notice it.
Drew Beam shook off the pitch that was called and went fastball, and that kid hit it over the left field wall. So that tells me a couple things. As a former pitcher, if a coach who consistently calls my games, especially this late in the season, like Frank Anderson knows what Drew Beam's out pitches are. When a coach consistently calls my game, calls a certain pitch, and we're talking first inning, and I shake it off. And if you watch, Drew Beam doesn't shake many pitches. If I shake it off, that means I don't feel good about it. Well, he threw a flat fastball instead, and the kid hit it 390 feet over the left field wall. So that tells me several things. It tells me, number one, Drew Beam didn't feel good about his stuff, and he wasn't confident enough to throw it deep in the count, and his fastball wasn't moving enough to have confidence either. But he felt like he could throw it for a strike. So that was a bad sign in literally the very first hitter of the game. And I felt like it didn't get any better from there. Like I said, at least twice Cal Stark called cutters, and they never moved.
Well, I think, in a hindsight is 2020 situation, I think you're exactly right. As soon as they tied the game, Chase Burns should have been coming in the game. Give him something different to look at off the mound. And then if he doesn't pan out, then you've got Russell and Halverson after him. But Chase Burns should have been coming in the game, because that was a wasted opportunity this whole weekend to never get him any pitches off the mound. Like that was a waste. I was sitting there watching that today thinking, why?
Yeah.
Where is he? Why is he not coming in? So,
and if he's injured and they're trying to hide it, okay, that's fine. But they talked about him last night.
Right.
So I don't think he was injured.
Yeah, I agree. So it doesn't get any easier for Tennessee's baseball team. They've got 2 really tough series on the horizon. They got Kentucky this weekend, which, once again, Kentucky is a very good baseball team.
Oh yeah.
If you ever hear Chris Burke talk about Kentucky's baseball team, he is very high on Kentucky's baseball team. They got pitching. I do think it is advantageous to Tennessee that it's at Lindsey Nelson and not Kentucky Stadium, because Tennessee, as we have seen, lives and dies on the long ball pretty much. And nobody hits home runs at Kentucky Stadium. It's ginormous. I think it's the largest park in the SEC. No one hits home runs there. No, Kentucky is last in the SEC in home runs because they play at their stadium.
Yeah.
Like, it is not conducive to power hitters for sure. And so I think it benefits Tennessee that it is a home series, but it doesn't get any easier after that. Then they got to go play at South Carolina. So that's not going to be an easy series by any means. South Carolina can straight up hit the ball.
Yeah. Well, South Carolina's just good all the way around. They're complete. I said there was 2 things I felt like we learned today. The other one was we're now 3-12 on the road. Including neutral site, we are now 3-12 on the road. That's scary, because as it sits right now, Most analysts were predicting that if Tennessee won 2 out of their last 3 SEC series, that they would get the 16 seed and they would get to host the final regional. Well, we just dropped Georgia. So that means in order to get that 16 seed, we've got to win the Kentucky series, which is doable, and the South Carolina series, which probably isn't doable based on how we play on the road and the fact that they're one of the best teams in the country. So right now, we are the 7 seed in the SEC tournament. If it started tomorrow, we'd be the 7 seed. That probably means we're in no matter what. They can't
Agreed.
officially say we're mathematically in, but we're pretty stinking close. You just got to be in the top 12. And right now, Ole Miss and Mississippi State are both 5 games behind us, and Missouri is 4 games behind us. So, it's going to be really hard for us to mess that up. Like we're pretty much in the SEC tournament, but if you lose 1 out of the next 2 series, and then you go to the SEC tournament and lose your first 2 games, you're definitely not getting that 16 seed. So now you're a 2 seed. And if you look at the D1 baseball rankings, this is going to sound crazy. I'm kind of hoping we are a 2 seed, because if it lays out the way it does right now, we're going to end up in one of 3 places: West Virginia, East Carolina, or Campbell. So I think we all know if we end up at West Virginia, East Carolina, or Campbell, we all know what that stadium is going to look like. Those 3 schools fans are not going to outnumber Tennessee fans, especially that close to home.
Yeah.
So
East Carolina might, because they got some awesome fans too, but Tennessee fans travel well, and we know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to feel like home games. So if we can't be that 16 seed, I almost kind of hope we're like number 20, 21, because that'll guarantee us one of those 3 spots.
Yeah, I hope we don't. I know it sounds crazy, but I hope we don't get the 16 seed, because I hope we're not the 17 seed, because the 17 seed is the number 2 seed at the number 16 seed, regional. I hope that we're at best the 18 seed, because if you're the 16 seed and you get to host that regional, awesome. But then you have to turn around and go to the number 1 seed super regional and play at their place in the super regional.
So I've got the rankings pulled up right now. Actually, you don't want to be the 18 seed. If it holds true, if the rankings stay the way they are, if we're the 18 seed, we have to go to Oregon State. So
that stinks.
Nobody wants to go across the country.
So
we want to be 19 or lower.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that sounds, counterintuitive, but it's not. Like, if we're the 16 seed, if we win that regional, we have to go to LSU essentially for the super regional.
I would love to be a 2 seed and be going to 33-11 West Virginia.
Yeah, for real.
That is a very, very winnable regional.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the super regionals, the thing to be concerned about is the fact that Tennessee has not played well on the road at all this year. And so if they make it through the regional, no matter where they go, they're going to be on the road in the super regional as well. Even if they somehow luck into that 16 seed and they host a regional, which would be great for Knoxville. It'd be great for Lindsey Nelson Stadium. But if they do that, they still have to go on the road to a super regional opponent. And if it's the 16 seed, then they're going to LSU. That's what's going to happen. And they have to play Skeens again. I don't think anybody watching this episode wants to go play Skeens again. Nobody in America wants to go have to play Skeens at LSU. Nobody wants to do that. So personally, I would also love the fact that if they end up having to go to West Virginia and I would be very curious to see how it shakes out with super regional pairings. If you have SEC teams in, I think it would be safe to say that of the 16 teams that make super regionals, I would say it's very, very possible that 7 or 8 of those teams are going to be SEC teams.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair.
So just looking at it, if things stay as they are right now, and this is kind of fascinating actually. If we end up in the West Virginia or the Campbell Regional, our super regional opponent would be Florida or Vanderbilt. I'm kind of pulling for that. I'm like, please let's be the 2 seed in West Virginia or Campbell. Because we know both of those are super regionals. We can absolutely win.
Yeah, especially after you swept Vandy earlier this year.
And should have beaten Florida. Like we had Florida in every one of those games and gave them away.
They should have beat LSU. They gave those games away. Defensive mistakes, just simple defensive, letting a fly ball fall in the middle of the infield. I mean, like simple defensive mistakes.
And let's be honest, Florida for the last 5-ish years have been incredible choke artists in the postseason. That has kind of become their MO. So it would not hurt my feelings at all if we got West Virginia and then Florida, or Campbell and then Florida. I think that's the really interesting path.
It'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out, because no one should be hoping Tennessee gets the 16 seed and hosts a regional. You just don't want to do that. That is not a recipe for success once you get to the super regionals. It's just not. And so, we'll see what happens the next 2 weekends. That'll certainly determine where they end up being seated. It's fascinating that I don't even think it's a question at this point. I think it's just a fact. There will be teams in the SEC that do not make the SEC tournament that do make the NCAA tournament. I mean, like that's going to happen. I'll be shocked if it doesn't. That's how competitive the SEC is. It is by far and away the most stacked league in the whole country. Just even if you don't make your own conference tournament, you're still going to make the national tournament. So very interesting.
So I would say, just looking at the rankings right now and the overall records, so Missouri is sitting at 27-20. If they get in the SEC tournament, if Ole Miss and Mississippi State are the 2 that get left out, then I think all 12 teams in the SEC tournament make the NCAA tournament. Ole Miss and Mississippi State are currently sitting at 25-23 and 24-23. Those records are not good enough to get in the NCAA tournament. They're going to have to make a late run. They're going to have to make a late run here in the last couple of weeks. Yep. Now, if they do and Missouri does, then it's possible we could see 13 teams get in. But I would say right now, whatever 12 make it to Hoover are the 12 that will make it into the NCAA tournament.
Well, other than baseball, there has been some very exciting stuff happening, especially this weekend at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Or not Lindsey Nelson Stadium, the softball stadium. And that is Lady Vol softball clinched the SEC championship for, I believe, the second time in program history. That is awesome. They have dominated this year. I mean, they have just dominated. And Kiki Malloy sets a new single season record for most home runs in a season by a Lady Vol softball player.
Hit another one today for good measure, just to make sure it was a tougher record to break.
And Ashley Rogers is also striking out the Tennessee baseball team based on the video they put out a couple days ago on Twitter. Seeing those guys trying to get up there and hit Ashley Rogers was pretty funny. Kirby Cannell got hit in the arm, and he was like, I'm on first. That was really, really good. What'd you think about the Lady Vols this weekend?
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just celebrate everything they did, finishing the season 41-8, going 19-5 in the SEC, which is hands down the best conference in America. Like, it's not close. You know, win the SEC championship. Kiki Malloy hits 21 bombs, sets the record for home runs in a season. They move on. There's no rest for the weary. I've always thought this is kind of weird. And I know it's because of TV. They're trying to avoid the regionals and super regionals for baseball, and they're trying to get softball as much TV time as possible. But SEC tournament starts Tuesday. So they finish their season today. They get 1 day off to travel, and the tournament starts Tuesday. Luckily for the Lady Vols, they are the 1 seed, so they get the double bye. So they don't play Tuesday or Wednesday. On Thursday, they're the 7 o'clock game in prime time. They are on SEC Network live at 7 o'clock Thursday night against the winner of Florida and Kentucky. So should be a good game. Florida's a good program. Kentucky's a good program. We beat both during the regular season. But you have to think Ashley Rogers will be in the circle. And anytime she's in the circle, we've got a high probability of winning. I just wanted to point out, you're talking about that YouTube video or that Twitter video with the baseball team trying to hit Ashley Rogers. So just for those who don't know, if you're just kind of wondering and curious, a 67 mile per hour fastball, which is what they clocked her multiple times throwing to those guys. A 67 mile per hour fastball is equivalent to a 96 mile per hour baseball. So, when
it's tough to hit.
when Kirby Cannell and Drew Beam and Xander Sechrist and other pitcher only guys try to step in a box and hit 96, it's not going to be pretty.
I loved, I think it was Christian Moore was in the box at one point, and Kirby told him, man, worst that can happen, she strikes out. And then literally the very next thing, he swings and misses, and then in the captions and subtitles, like I said, strikes out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, it was just, it's unfair. Oh, and it's totally different. Seeing it come from this arm angle to underneath arm angle, that's totally different. So, I mean, those guys had no chance. They knew that too, like going into it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was Xander Sechrist said, or no, it was Drew Beam. He's like, Kirby asked him, do you think you're going to make contact? And he goes, no. He's like, I don't think I'm going to make contact. And he did not. And so that was great.
She threw, I can't remember who it was. She threw a rise ball to one of them. And, they don't see baseballs do that. Like, baseballs don't literally elevate. And she threw a rise ball to one of them, and he must have swung 4 feet under it. Like, it was so far from making contact. And he just kind of turned around. I think it was Sechrist. And he just kind of turned around and looked at the side of the cage like, balls do that?
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah. That was a great video. I'm glad they did that. That was really good. Well, so this next week, a lot's happening. We got SEC softball tournament starting up. The BaseVols host Kentucky. And that is such a big series. Not going to be an easy series.
They got Austin P on Tuesday for a tune-up.
That was an interesting stat. They showed it near the end of the game today. Their next 2 weekend series, Kentucky and South Carolina. That is the RPI number 1 team in the country against the RPI number 3 team in the country. Back-to-back series. Kentucky's number 1 RPI. South Carolina's number 3 RPI. So not going to be an easy couple series. But, it's a good tune-up for the regionals and super regionals, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and people need to understand also, I mean, we are currently, and this is not a bad thing, we're in the best conference in America. And these guys, I mean, Tony Vitello called it 10 weeks of hell for a reason. We're 32-16. We're 12-12 in the conference. Kentucky's 33-13, 14-10 in the conference. And South Carolina's 36-11, 14-9 in the conference. So, we are not we are not that far behind these two teams. So I think the Kentucky series is very winnable because it's at home.
Yeah.
The South Carolina series, that one's going to be
Tough.
if we win that series, we deserve, again, you hate to say it, we deserve that 16 seed and we deserve to host. The good news is we would be hosting. The bad news is after we win that regional, then we have to go to LSU. And
Yep.
I
Unless
just,
something crazy happens and LSU loses their series
yeah,
or their regional, which will not happen.
right.
That will not happen. So, well, we appreciate everybody joining us who are watching right now. Thank you all so much. Let's see, we got some folks on YouTube watching at the moment, so we appreciate you guys watching. Hey, if you haven't seen our interview with Charlie Burris is the host of the Big Orange podcast on A to Z Sports in Nashville. And so if you haven't yet seen that, we recommend watching that from Friday. That was a great, great interview. A lot of fun to talk with Charlie, and we really appreciate him joining us. Well, I'm telling you, I'm super pumped about the guests we've been able to have on our show, and people have been so gracious with their time and joining us, and we are so fortunate and so thankful. We've had tremendous guests, and we're just super pumped about that. So we hope everyone has a great week ahead of you. Busy week for Vols action. So be following us on Twitter. I'll show you where you can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's at the Vol Bros everywhere. It's all the same on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter at the Vol Bros. And so we hope everybody will follow along with us this week as we have so many things happening with especially with softball and baseball. And we didn't even mention the fact that tennis is like dominating in the national tournament, the NCAA tournament right now. They just won, or it was either men's or women's tennis just won their regional, one of the two of them.
Both.
Or both.
As,
Yeah.
as of today, they both won their regional.
So, I mean, there's a lot happening on Rocky Top. So make sure you're following with us on Twitter, especially. It's where we're probably most active. And keep your eyes peeled for this, because we'll probably go live a couple times this week because there's so much happening. So we appreciate everybody joining us. We hope everybody has a great evening, and go Vols. Fault. I did not end the broadcast. That's my fault. I hit leave studio instead of in broadcast. See, that's what happens when you're live. That's the first time I've done that yet. So I'm gonna hit the thing again, and then we'll be gone. So we hope everybody has a great evening. Live show, man. Live show. There's a red X, and so I hit leave studio instead of the red button that says in broadcast.